In this video, we're going to talk about the top 5 most common questions that come up in Wegmans interviews, and I'm going to help you plan brilliant answers that will get you hired at Wegmans. So let's look at a question that comes up in every single interview and can actually make or break the whole interview at Wegmans. So the number one question you need to be ready for is, when can you work at Wegmans? I'm going to show you how you can answer this question in a way that scores really well. So you want to show 4 things. You want to show that you have lots and lots of flexibility. Really emphasize as much flexibility as you possibly can. You want to emphasize that you are reliable, that you've got a good track record of reliability, and that you will be on time for all of your shifts. Make sure you mention that. You want to show a can-do attitude. That means you want to volunteer for as many times as you can, and you're really trying to say yes to as much as possible. If they mention a time that you're going to struggle with, you always want to try and give as much as you can and try and work around that. They want someone with a can-do attitude that's trying to do their best. And fundamentally, they're also checking to see, are you actually dedicated to your job? If there is a long list of things that are more important to you and are going to get in your way of actually working at the store, and you're going to choose all of these things above working at Wegmans, then they're not going to hire you. They're going to hire someone else who shows a bit more dedication. The other clever trick that you can use is you can think about the times which are more difficult for a store to staff and mention those times as times that you would be available for. So if you're happy to work weekends, if you've got the capacity to work school breaks, evenings, at opening time, and also at short notice, you can also mention that you're happy to work overtime. Of course, you won't be expected to work only at these times, and hopefully they would schedule you very fairly and that you'd have a balance. But by saying that you would be open to these times occasionally or as part of your schedule, that really does get them much more interested and shows that they're hiring someone that's going to be more useful to their business. So stick to what's on this slide and you will be successful in this question. And really the key is to say yes to as much as possible and don't bring up any times that you don't want to work, because what's the point volunteering something that's going to be used against you and is going to be written down as a negative? Second thing you absolutely must be prepared for is your knowledge of the company. You really need to prepare for questions about Wegmans and also show off throughout the interview that you have great knowledge of the company. Obviously, you should never go to an interview without knowing the facts about the company. So this section is going to be really important to help you be well prepared for your interview. So I'm going to show you how to answer this question and then run through the key facts that you need to know. So when you're answering this question, you need to make sure that you describe the things that everyone knows about the company. Then mention some things that only some people would actually know if they really knew the company, and then drop in 1 or 2 facts that only people that have done great research and great preparation would actually know. And I'm going to give you a few of those facts in just a second. So let's start with the key things that you have to know to start with. Wegmans is based around superstores. Their stores are larger than perhaps the average grocery store and offer a wide range of services and a wide variety of products. They tend to focus on the upper market segment, so their clients are slightly higher income and their products are very high quality. They are focused on the mid-Atlantic and northeastern states with a particular focus on New York. They were founded by John and Walter Wegman. This is a name that you need to remember, these 2 men that founded the company originally, all the way back in 1916. So that's a very, very long time ago. That was kind of the middle of the First World War. So that gives you an idea of how old this company actually is. And that is a number that you have to remember. And it shows the long heritage that the business has. Originally, it was founded as the Rochester Fruit and Vegetable Company. That was its original name. And that's a good thing to mention just to show that you've actually really done your research. Because if you hadn't researched the company, you wouldn't know that. The next thing you should mention, and you can link it to a reason why you want to work for the company, is that it has consistently ranked among Fortune magazine's best companies to work for, usually very, very high up in the list. So that's a real positive. It's a family-owned company, family-controlled business, run by the family. So there is a very different culture working for Wegmans as a family-owned business than working for a corporate shareholder-controlled business. The other thing you can mention is they are well known for their Italian classics line. That's very popular. And also they have their green leaf, which is how they label their organic product. They're very health conscious. And another good example of that is they have no tobacco. They do not sell tobacco products at all. They completely stopped that. You should also be aware of the Shoppers Club, which is currently one of their loyalty programs, and that's where you can go to get discounts and coupons. Some other interesting facts to mention is there was actually a High School Musical put on about Wegmans. It's got a very strong and loyal fan base, and the Office sitcom is based around Wegmans as being their grocery store within the sitcom. Lastly, a really good idea is to check out the Wegmans News and Media webpage. So just Google that and you will get recent up-to-date news about the company, and you can mention that in your interview to show that you're really engaged and you've actually looked up regular news about the company, and that really does show that you've done some amazing research and actually really care about getting the job because you went to those lengths of actually researching the recent news. So this is how you ace this question. Remember as much as you can on the slides, take some notes, take some bullet points, learn it, and you will be ready to impress with your knowledge. Let's move on to the next question, which is, why do you want to work for Wegmans? Obviously, this question is extremely likely to come up, so it's not one you want to make up on the day. It is one that you need to plan and prepare for, do some bullet points while I'm going through what you should include in your answer, and really plan it out and learn it. It will make such a big difference to your chance of getting the job, so make sure you are absolutely prepared for this question. So, some basic things that you need to include in your answer is think about what is special about Wegmans. Link it to the previous facts that we talked about on the previous slide. Why do you actually like Wegmans, and why is this a place that you actually would like to work? One thing you could talk about is the family ownership and how that makes Wegmans different to most other grocery stores you could work for. Also talk about why you want to work in grocery. Is this something that you will enjoy? Are you interested in food? Are you interested in working with customers and working with other people? Is working in a grocery store something you expect to enjoy? And say that you expect to enjoy it and why. There's career progression opportunities. You can start in a basic role and move up to assistant manager, and then perhaps long term you could look at store management and growing with the company. If you really like the Wegmans brand and you shop there, you can talk about brand affinity. If your family has shopped there for many, many years and that is part of your life, then you can talk about that and be really positive and enthusiastic about the brand and link your love of the brand to your reason to want to work with that company. You must be enthusiastic. So as you're answering the question, one of the things they're going to be assessing is your enthusiasm. They would much rather hire someone that is really, really interested in working for the company and enthusiastic about the Wegmans brand than hire someone who's not all that interested and gives the impression that they just want a basic, quick job to earn some money and they're not really particularly enthused about working here. So the other thing you have to be aware of is there's certain things that you must absolutely avoid. If Wegmans hear these things, then they really get put off hiring you. So if you say something like, I live next to this Wegmans, so you live local, they're not particularly interested. They assume that anyway, and many people commute. Living next to a store is not a strong reason for wanting to work there that's going to interest the company. Of course, it's interesting to you, but they really don't want to hear that. I need money, or the idea that you're doing this job until a better job comes along. So maybe you got laid off from one job, or you don't want to work in grocery, but you've got to work now, but then you'll do something later in the future. You don't see this as being something you want to do for any length of time. That is going to massively discourage them. Talking about leaving the company at your interview is a really, really bad idea. Anything that Wegmans doesn't care about and doesn't suggest that you will be better at the job, or that you are someone that is enthusiastic about working for the company and therefore is likely to be a slightly better employee, is not going to help your case at all. Anything that's not relevant to them, don't mention. Then some top tips of some inspiration of things to talk about is love of the Wegmans brand. Talk about progression if you're very career-minded. You can talk about Wegmans as a long-term career. It's much easier for Wegmans to hire one person and keep them for 10 years than it is to hire 10 different people every single year. So if you give the idea that you're really considering this as a long-term career, it's going to make their life a bit easier because there'll be less recruitment and less expense constantly recruiting people. If you have experience of customer service, you've worked in this sort of environment before, talk about how you love doing that and you enjoy that. Talk about all the skills that you expect to learn. Link it to family ownership. Wegmans is a family-owned brand. That completely changes the corporate culture. Mention what we talked about in the last slide, that it was one of the best companies to work for on Fortune's list, and look up the most recent list. If you know someone who works at the company, talk about what they think about the company in a really positive way. If someone suggested you should apply here and they actually work there, share in their enthusiasm. Say that this other employee, you don't have to name them, another person who works at the company actually recommended that I should apply because, and talk about all the good things that they had to say about the company. So make sure you plan out this answer with some bullet points. Get as many of these ideas. Of course, you can rewind it and look over the slide again, maybe screenshot it, get those ideas in, avoid the bad things on the down arrow, and you will absolutely nail this question, and it will make a massive difference. Learn your answer to this question, and you will be much more likely to get the job. So let's look at the next question, which is, how would you manage a complaint from an angry customer? Complaints, dealing with angry customers, very, very common questions. Lots of questions potentially could come up around things going wrong, and they want to be reassured that you know how to deal with these situations. So there's basically 4 things you have to get in your answer, and you always ace the question by getting these key ideas in. So the first thing you talk about is de-escalation. De-escalation means calming everything down, getting the situation under control. Just use that word, de-escalation. I will start by using de-escalation techniques to get the situation under control. Then you want to talk about that you will show that you are listening. When a customer is making a complaint or is angry, one thing that massively diffuses the situation is showing that you're actually listening to them, because part of the reason that they're angry and shouting perhaps is that they are really trying to get someone's attention. And when they are convinced they have someone's attention, it goes a long way to calming the situation down. The next thing you want to mention is that you have a complete and total focus on the solution. You are solutions minded. You want to solve this problem. You want to make the complaint go away, and you want to stop that customer being angry at Wegmans and turn it into a good experience. But you also want to reassure them that any solution that you find to a customer's problem or complaint will always be within Wegmans policy. And fundamentally, the last thing you mention is that your goal is to transform a negative experience from a customer where something previously went wrong into a positive experience because of how well you fixed that problem. So if you get those 4 ideas around de-escalation, showing you're listening, a focus on the solution within Wegmans policy, and then turning that negative into a positive, get those 4 ideas and you are going to be successful on this question. The next question is a very common question that Wegmans like to ask, and that is around what your previous employment history is. Most people don't answer this question well. They just list all their other employers and the interviewer just writes them down. And they miss the opportunity to show off all the skills and experiences that they've had in those previous employments and convince them that they're actually going to be really great at this job because of this experience. So really do plan your answers to this. And even if they don't ask this, bring it up. You don't have to just sit there and answer questions. You can actually put some input in, actually mention your employment history. If they don't ask, you can bring that up at some point. And the way that you approach this question is you start by saying what the job title was, talk about your responsibilities. The more responsibilities you had, the better. You've obviously left that company, so you want to say a good reason for leaving. You don't mention anything about, conflict or falling out or being fired. If that is the case, that you're fired from those jobs, that is not something that you want to immediately volunteer. You want to ideally have a good reason for leaving. You got a promotion, your family moved to another city, you moved with your partner, some reason that seems that's involuntary, or you're moving for a positive reason and you left on good terms. And then at the end of your answer for each individual job, say one sentence that links it to Wegmans. So for example, if you worked at McDonald's, you would talk about how you got experience of customer service and give some examples of good customer service that you provided while you were there. Then the other thing that you want to do is make sure you get these ideas in. So you want to emphasize how your experience is relevant. So that's the really important thing of linking all your past jobs to the job you're applying for at Wegmans and using that as a way of saying, I have the experience that's going to make me good at my job. They are also looking out for previous issues. If someone has been a problem in the past, they are probably going to be a problem when they're hired now. So they want to screen out people with previous issues. That's what they are hunting for. They are hunting for things in your previous employment history that they can use as a reason not to hire you. Because people who've been problems in the past are probably going to be a problem in the future, and they want to spot that. So they are using their senses to drill down on any of these issues. You have to be aware of that. And fundamentally, if someone's got the right experience and they've got a good previous track record of employment, they're probably going to be a good hire. That is what they are looking for. So, some top tips for success. Emphasize that you left on good terms. If you've got references from previous managers that are positive, draw attention to those. Say that you could return to any of those jobs and they would be delighted to have you back. If you really loved your jobs, talk about how much you loved all of those previous jobs. And also, it's super important that you explain how your work experience will help you at Wegmans. That's the number one thing that people miss out, and is the number one most important thing to use this question to do. So get those 4 ideas on the list on every single job as you go through them, and you will use this question to its full potential. Lastly, to finish, I've got a good list of some questions that you could ask at the end of your Wegmans interview, so that you can use this opportunity at the very, very end to impress them a little bit more. So the first thing you should always ask about is what the next steps in the hiring process are. Show that you actually care about what happens next. If you're not asking that question, it means maybe you're not so interested in getting the job. Then you should definitely ask, what should a new hire do if they're successful to be really well prepared for starting at the company? Look for some suggestions of things that you can do now before you start to be well prepared. And that suggests that actually they're employing someone who really cares about being good at their job, so much so that they're actually going to do work and preparation before they even start. The next thing you could ask about is ask about the team that you could be working with and the culture at the store. Show that those are things you actually care about. You can also ask them, how would you characterize the ideal Wegmans employee? What does a great employee look like? And when they tell you what they are looking for, you can talk about your previous experience, you can talk about your personality, you can talk about other aspects of you that helps them see that you actually meet a lot of the criteria for what they think a good employee is. And lastly, you need to be listening to them all the way through the interview and invent one question on the day. So as the interview goes through, pick up on something interesting that they say and then ask about it at the end to show that you're actively listening to what they have to say and you're engaging in a good two-way dialogue. So I hope this video has been helpful to you. If it did help you with your Wegmans interview, please like and subscribe below, and post in the comments what questions they ask, because every interview is different. And finally, thank you very much for watching.